I'm Katie Coleman, and I'm here because diabetes sucks. I would rather be eating essentially only carbohydrates. As you can see here, I put the Velveeta macaroni cheese in a place of honor because I miss it so dearly, and I can't eat it. So, the purpose of this video is for us to have a discussion about how to deal with gestational diabetes mellitus. I have been diagnosed since I was 28 weeks pregnant. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant with a little girl who is due in probably will be induced at either 37, 38, or 39 weeks. So the latest they're going to let me go is 4 weeks from now. I'm not ready, but in the meantime, I have to continue eating in a way that makes this baby not the fattest baby ever so that I can push her out without destroying myself. Everything I'm going to talk about is directly from and approved by my doctor. Some doctors have a little bit of a difference between how many carbs they want you to have per meal or how many carbs are allowed for snacks. So you need to talk to your doctor and follow their recommendations. This is just an overview of what I've been told by my doctor and based on my research, what I've found. My doctor personally, and most doctors that I've researched online, say that they suggest between 30 and 45 grams of carbohydrates per meal and up to 15 grams of carbs for snacks. Now, what I've found as I've been tracking my sugars, this actually is too much, and that I need to stay closer to the 25 to 35 grams of carb range. I'm also going to talk about what you're going to need. I'm going to talk about the basics of keeping track of your food. I'm going to talk about how to read a nutrition label to control your sugar spikes, and I'm going to talk about a couple of hacks that will help you to get by in this really disastrous moment of your life. So let's talk about a couple of things that you're going to need as you go through the journey of having GDM. So the first thing that I could not live without is a food scale. This is the one that I purchased off of Amazon. It wasn't too expensive. This is actually probably even more high-tech than what you need it to be. But you do need to be able to weigh the different food portion sizes, which will correlate to the nutritional facts, which we'll get to in a second. I also would recommend downloading an app that will track all of this information for you. I personally use MyFitnessPal, and I like it because you can upload your own recipes and just scan barcodes. It makes it much easier because, I mean, if you're going to eat 3 meals a day, 2 or 3 snacks a day, it gets a little overwhelming, and it remembers what you've entered in the past, makes it much easier. I also would recommend, these are not essentials, but I would recommend getting a Pinterest account and creating a board of recipes that other people have already tried and vetted. But that also means, lastly, that you're going to need a little bit of time. If you know that you're already crunched for time, I have an 18-month-old son who is all over the place. So for me, meal prepping has been one of the most important things that I can do, or just double batching whenever I make something that is going to work for my diabetes. That way I can freeze it and then use it again later. So here's a couple of basic things that you need to know about. Number one is that it's not necessarily your fault that you developed gestational diabetes. It doesn't mean that you have an unhealthy lifestyle or that you're necessarily eating unhealthy, although I totally was. What is actually happening is that your placenta is not working the way that it should be with the glucose spikes and all of that, and that can be a detriment to the baby. So we have to figure out a way to get around all of these really high glucose spikes. So the best way to do that before we get to insulin or having to take a medication is to manage our diet. So let's look at a label. There's 2 major things you need to look for whenever you're reading the label on the side of a box or a package of food. The first is that you need to look at the number of grams of carbohydrates as well as the amount of dietary fiber and if there are any sugar alcohols in the product. Then you also want to look at and keep track of the amount of protein that you're taking in for each serving. Serving size is also important because when you're eating something like pasta, the serving size is usually a lot smaller than what you expect it to be. When looking at the nutritional label on the side, whatever it says for carbohydrates, let's say that there's 10 in a serving, you can subtract the amount of dietary fiber. Let's say that there's 5 grams of dietary fiber. So you're actually only net taking in 5 grams of carbohydrates. The same goes for sugar alcohols, which you will see whenever you eat something similar to this, like monk fruit or any other sugar replacement, sugar-free syrup, for example, those are going to have sugar alcohols in them, and you don't have to count those either unless your doctor says otherwise. It is also recommended that you keep your protein levels 1.5 to 2 times the amount of carbohydrates that you're taking in net per meal. So let's take a second and finish out this video by looking at some of the hacks and things that I found that work or don't work when it comes to managing my blood sugar spikes. So the first thing is that when I'm trying to increase the amount of protein I'm taking in, is that I will have a protein shake with at least 1 meal a day, at least. And sometimes even that is not enough to keep my blood sugar down to where I need it to be, but it does help it to be a little bit more comparable without having to add insulin to my diet. The same thing goes for string cheese because it has a high amount of protein, 6 grams-ish for this string cheese, and only 1 carbohydrate. So it balances really well. There's also the option of replacing some of our favorite things with things that may be a little bit healthier and more carb conscious. There are tortillas that are carb conscious and actually taste delicious. These are not one of them. These taste like crap. They're protein wraps, and it tastes like you're eating paper. So don't buy these. These are from Aldi. Another healthy choice is to snack on pork rinds because pork rinds have no carbohydrates and are high in protein. And again, at this moment in our lives, we're not super concerned with the fat content or the calorie content because we are just trying to make sure that our sugar is not spiking. So balancing carbohydrates, keeping them as low as possible, and increasing our intake of protein is going to be really important. Lastly, I want to talk about pasta because pasta is my absolute favorite carbohydrate. I have a couple of different options here that I've tried. So the first one is the regular white pasta. This is from Aldi, and it has 42 grams of carbs for a 2-ounce serving. 2 of those are fiber, so 40 net carbs for 2 ounces. Now, I thought it would be a lot healthier and fewer carbs if I were to get whole grain pasta, also from Aldi, and I was surprised to find that whole grain, which I expected to have more fiber, has 41 total carbs, 5 of which are fiber, which means that we end up still getting about, 36 grams of carbs for 2 ounces. There's not a huge difference here, but sometimes the fiber in this will lower your blood sugar just a smidge, but really 5 grams of fiber is not that much. So then the next thing I tried was a on-brand Protein Plus Barilla. This has 39 grams of carbs, 4 of which are dietary fiber. So this has 35 for 2 ounces. So far it's winning. And it has 10 grams of protein per serving, which honestly isn't that much. But if I can cook this, have a small serving, maybe half of a serving of this type of pasta, and then load it up with chicken or whatever, this is helpful. But the thing that I found that works best, and again, this is from Aldi, is a vegetable-based high-protein spaghetti. This is entirely made, this one specifically, we have edamame or lentils. This one's made out of black soybeans, and it has 25 grams of protein per serving of 2 ounces, which is incredible. There's only 19 grams of carbs, and 11 of them are dietary fiber. So you get 2 ounces, 25 grams of plant-based protein, and you're only taking in 8 carbs. So what I will do sometimes, because I do still need probably about 30 grams of carbs, is that I'll eat an entire portion of one of these for 8 grams of carbs, and then I'll eat a half portion of one of these and mix it all together. Kind of helps me out with the texture a little bit because this is a little funky. It is black, and it turns the water black. But when you put it all together, it's really not that bad. So hopefully my hacks today and all this information helps you keep better track of your sugars, and hopefully we all end up having very healthy but not entirely huge babies when the time comes. Thanks for watching.